Welcome to the second ever episode of the Press Coverage Podcast. I am, as always, your host, Ben Klingler. And real quick, before we dive into this second ever episode, make sure if you haven't already, go back and check out my first episode where, I give you an intro to the show, intro to who I am, as well as covering teams A through C in the alphabet, predicting what their win-loss record will be for this 2026 college football season. Alrighty. Again, before we dive in, make sure if you're listening on Spotify, click that follow button, click the thumbs up button, and then make sure to share it with friends, family, people that you think would be interested in this. Getting my name out there in the public is the biggest step in my podcasting journey. So make sure if you guys could help me with that, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you're listening on on YouTube, I would appreciate if you do the same thing. Click that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and share it with friends and family. Alrighty. Enough said. Let's dive in to the second ever podcast episode, where in this episode, we're going to be diving into teams D through F in our scheduling previews, as well as doing some of the teams that play this Saturday, because college football is only 2 days away, if you can believe it. 2 days. I've been waiting all spring and all summer for this. It's only 2 days away. Got games this Saturday, some big ones we're looking forward to. TCU, North Carolina kicking off the season. We got Virginia Tech, Virginia, NC State's a big one. And see Florida State in action. How do they look? USC, all those teams. We're going to be covering those as well in this podcast episode. Alrighty, first team up, Boston College. Yes, Boston College does not start with a letter D through F. It starts with a B, as I forgot to include them in my A through C. I just glanced over them and forgot to cover them. So let's start this podcast off by covering the Boston College Eagles. Boston College got Bill O'Brien in year 2 as he's ready to try to make that leap and make this Boston College team an ACC contender. Their schedule, they have at Cincinnati, then they're home against Rutgers, home against Maine, and then home against Virginia Tech. Those are the first 4 weeks of the season. Real quick, if you don't know how this works, I'm going to cover their schedule, kind of look over it, and then I have predicted every single regular season game for the 2026 college football season. I'm going to give you their win-loss predictions, who I think they're going to be, and what their record will be at the end of the season. So like I said, week 1, they're on the road against Cincinnati, and then they're home 3 straight games, Rutgers, Maine, and Virginia Tech, the following 3. Week 1 against at Cincinnati, maybe their most difficult game out of this, except for I think this is a win for Boston College. I really like Bill O'Brien's offensive scheme, and I think his scheme fits against this Cincinnati defense. It happened last year. It's happened against some teams similar. Boston College, they scored a bunch of points on Michigan State last year. They ended up losing that game. It was 42-40. But again, they show that this Bill O'Brien offense can put up points, and I think the defense is going to be a lot better. So I think they go on the road and they beat Cincinnati in week 1. Week 2, though, home against Rutgers, I think that's a loss. I really like this Rutgers team headed into 2026. They're a sleeper Big Ten team that, if you kind of waltz into that game thinking it's going to be easy, I think they're going to surprise some people. Big player, KJ Duff. If you have a free couple 15, 20 minutes in these next couple days, make sure you tune into KJ Duff's highlight reel. Go watch it on YouTube. Phenomenal player to watch. Got tremendous speed, tremendous hands, crafty route runner. One of the top players in college football heading into the season. I think him and Rutgers get the win over the Boston College. They're Boston College 1-1. Then they're home against Maine, which is a win. Then they're home against Virginia Tech, which I think is a loss. I think Virginia Tech is going to be much improved this year. Then they go to SMU. Again, the long flight from Boston to Texas. Again, I'm really high on SMU. SMU is one of the favorites in the ACC. SMU gets the win. So Boston College 2-3 through the first 5 weeks. Then they get a bye week before they host Pittsburgh. Hosting Pitt, that is going to be a win. Again, if it was on the road, maybe I'd think differently. But because it's at home, Boston College gets the win. And they are 3-3 halfway through the season. Then they have this brutal 4-game stretch where they have to go to Bobby Dodd Stadium and play at Georgia Tech. Then they are at Duke. Then they are host Florida State before they go on the road to play Notre Dame. I have them losing all 4 of those games. Again, 2 winnable games, maybe at Florida State at Duke and then host Florida State. 2 games that I think maybe a good showing at Boston College and maybe like a B- game from those other 2 teams can get Boston College the win. But again, they're banking on Boston College playing elite and Duke and Florida State playing down to their level. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Duke and Florida State and Georgia Tech and Notre Dame all beat Boston College, meaning Boston College is 3-7 heading into their home finale against their rival, the Syracuse Orange, in which I think they end their home slate with a win over Syracuse before ending it on the road against Miami, which is a loss. Miami, they're the clear favorite in the ACC, and I don't think that Boston College is going to go to their place and pull the upset, meaning Boston College finishes the season 4-8, meaning they don't make a bowl game. Do have a couple quality wins there. Pitt and Syracuse, two kind of rivals of theirs. They get wins over them, and I definitely think they take a step forward in how they look on the field, but I don't think the results this season are going to make Boston College fans consider this season a crazy success. Next team up, we got the Duke Blue Devils. Speaking of the devil, no pun intended, but we have kind of an interesting scenario as this Duke team. Just named Walter Eggett, the transfer from San Jose State, their starting quarterback. Guy, sixth-year senior, got a ton of experience, not going to be rattled. He's going to know what all the coverage looks are. The question is does he have the talent to go out there and win them some games against some of the high-level teams in the ACC? It's a question that a lot of people are asking, including myself. That's one of the biggest questions I have about this Duke squad. Receiving core looks really new. They lost Cooper Barquette to Miami, as well as their quarterback, Darian Mensah. The receiving core is kind of one of the weaknesses, one of the question marks headed into the season for this Duke team. I think they'll get some things figured out. I don't think they'll be hit rock bottom, but I do expect a pretty decent downgrade from where they've been in recent seasons. With that being said, week 1, they host Tulane. Tulane, never an easy opponent, but I do think they handle business at home. They're 1-0 to start the season. Then they're at Illinois, which I think, rematch of, they've had a couple close games this last couple of seasons, but I think Illinois gets the win. Illinois is a sneaky, decent team in the Big Ten this year. I think Illinois handles business at home. So Duke's 1-1. Then they have home games against Stanford and William and Mary. Again, two inferior teams, to them. I think they handle business. They're 2-0 in that stretch, meaning they are 3-1 headed into kind of the meat of their schedule. They have two kind of big sections to their schedule, and it's separated by Boston College. The first stretch of 3 is at Georgia Tech, hosts North Carolina, at Virginia. 3 teams at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, one of the better teams in the conference. But North Carolina and Virginia, two kind of middle-of-the-pack teams, I think, in the ACC this year. But I think they're still better than what Duke is. The North Carolina one especially. I think North Carolina has not had the better end of Duke in the last 3 to 5 years. Duke's kind of, it seems weird, but they're the superior football team. And I think North Carolina needing a win and Bill Belichick needing, kind of to get those games like Duke if he wants to keep his job. I think North Carolina gets the win. And Virginia going to Charlottesville is never an easy game. So I think Virginia gets the win, meaning they're 3-4 through 8 weeks. Then they host Boston College, which I already mentioned is a win, before the next kind of chunk of their schedule and their most difficult part of the schedule, which they are at NC State, they are at Miami, and then they host Clemson. Talk about 3 tough games, 3 of the best teams in the ACC. They lose all 3 of those in my mind. Not really much I have to talk about those games. They'll be underdogs in all 3 of them. I think, nothing special there. Then they finish the season at Wake Forest. Wake Forest, again, not looking too great. They're one of those teams that, Sam Hartman era were really good, but now not so much. Duke gets the win there. They end the season with a win, but their season record will be 5-7, meaning they miss a bowl game for the first time in what seems like quite a bit for this Duke team. Riley Leonard, Darian Saw, all those solid squads. I do think they miss a bowl game this upcoming season. Alrighty, that's the only team in the D category. And then there are no Power 4 teams in the E category, meaning we jump all the way to F. I got the t-shirt on, got this at their campus, and that's right, we are covering the Florida Gators. Florida, they are an interesting squad. Got new coach, John Summerall, got him from Tulane. Really kind of fired up guy. He's his emotion, like he's kind of a roller coaster at times. He can be really calm demeanor, especially to the media. He's straightforward and focused, a little bit of sarcasm even, but we've seen him get pretty fired up. He definitely can turn up the intensity in a heartbeat. And I think he's a guy that I think can rejuvenate this Florida program and get them back in the right direction, unlike Billy Napier did. Florida start the season 2 wins against Florida Atlantic and Campbell at home. No need to explain there. Then they go at Auburn and host Ole Miss. At Auburn, if you watched the previous episode, I think Auburn's going to be pretty good. So I think they lose at Jordan-Hare. And then we haven't done Ole Miss yet, but Ole Miss is going to be really good. And I think Ole Miss gets the win, meaning Florida is 2-2 to start the season. And fans are kind of got to be thinking, is this shades of last year? Where we hover around the 6-6 mark for like the 17th straight season, it feels like, for the Florida team. No, I can tell you it's not. Because in weeks 5 and 6, they're at Missouri. Missouri, not an easy place to play, but they get the win there. And then they're host South Carolina, the Swamp. They get the win over Lenora Sellers and the Gamecocks. Then they go, they have a game at Texas. Texas is going to be fired up for this one. Florida beat them in the Swamp last year. Texas is not going to overlook them. Texas gets the win there. Then it's the neutral site game in Atlanta versus Georgia, which, again, neutral site game in Atlanta, Georgia, doesn't really seem very fair. This game needs to be played either in Jacksonville or I would really love, since they're renovating Jacksonville, for this to be played in Georgia or in Florida, do a home and home for 2 years. That would be absolutely amazing. I mean, that rivalry would be taken to the next level if it were played on the team's campuses. But no, instead it's played in Atlanta this year. And I think Georgia gets the win there. They're just a superiorly talented team. Florida, they're looking at 4-4 through 9 weeks that are bye week in between Texas and Georgia. And all of a sudden you're looking at, oh no, is this same old, same old? Because in week 10, they host Oklahoma. And I think they beat Oklahoma. I think the Swamp is one of the toughest places to play. It's one of those where maybe Oklahoma coming off, I don't know who they played the week before, maybe coming off a sluggish game, like a big win or a loss, they just kind of sleepwalk into the stadium, which is something, if you sleepwalk in the stadium, you're going to lose. No ifs, ands, or buts. Ask Texas from last year. I think Florida pulls the upset. They beat Oklahoma, and then they turn that into momentum for the last 3 games of the season, and they win on the road against Kentucky. They win at home against Vanderbilt, and then they win at Florida State, making them finish the season 8-4, which for Florida fans, if you ask them right now, 8-4 is a really successful season for them. They get their big upset win. They're looking end of the season on a 4-game win streak, which means the hopes for next year are going to be super high. But I think a pretty successful season in year 1 for John Summerall. I think they go 8-4. Not a contender in the SEC, but they do make a bowl game. They do look like a team that, in the coming years will be a force to be reckoned with in the SEC. Now we got their rival, the Florida State Seminoles. They're a team that went from such a high to such a low in a heartbeat. And they've done this for the last 3 years. They go undefeated and miss the college football playoff in 2024, which is an outrage, by the way. Everybody's heard the 13-0, but still didn't go to the playoffs. Yeah, Florida State fans are going to hate me for that. But Florida State, they go 13-0. They don't make the playoffs. The next year they go, I forget what their record was, but it's like 5-7, 4-8. Like, terrible record. Miss a bowl game. Then this past year, they beat Alabama at home in week 1. Everybody thinking, oh, shoot, Florida State's back. Tommy Castellanos, Heisman dark horse. And then it just all goes downhill from there. They ended up, splitting most of their games. I forget their final record last year. Let me look at this. But their final record ended up being, what was it? 6-6, I believe. 5-7. Either way, it ended up being not a great season. Thomas Castellanos is gone and actually just signed with Texas Tech out of the transfer portal now that he got an extra year of eligibility. But Florida State this year, it's weird to think of Florida State as another contender. Mike Norvell clearly on the hot seat. Don't overlook them. That's all I'm going to say heading into the season. As bad as they look, Ashton Daniels at quarterback, don't overlook them in this ACC. Do I think they're going to be an ACC contender? No. Do I think they're going to compete with the likes of Miami? No. But do I think they're going to be as bad as people saying? I've heard people saying like 5-7, 4-8 for this team. Guys, it's not going to happen. I don't think it is going to. They ended up last season 5-7 was their final record. Sorry, I had to look that up. But this year, start the season off. It's not an easy start to the season. They get New Mexico State to start, which I think will be a win at home. Then they have to host SMU, and then they're at Alabama. SMU, again, they're going to be really good in the ACC. I think it's a win for SMU. At Alabama, Alabama's going to be fired up for that game. Keelan Russell's first real test, and I think they handle business. Alabama does. So, meaning Florida State 1-2 to season. Then they have back-to-back home games against Central Arkansas and Virginia. They handle business in both of those. They get the win. It's 3-2, especially a revenge game against Virginia from that double OT thriller last year. If you haven't watched that game, go back and watch that. Phenomenal game. Just rewatched that the other day. Before, their toughest stretch of the season, which is a back-to-back road games, week 6 and 7, at Louisville and then at Miami. 2 games. They're clearly going to have, which is weird to say this, but they're talent deficiencies in those games. Lincoln Keenholz for Louisville, Darian Mensah at Miami, 2 clear quarterback upgrades. I think they win. They lose both of those games, meaning they are 3-4 throughout their first 7 games. They got 5 games to go, and I think they finished the season. In their next stretch, they host Clemson, at Boston College, at Pitt, host NC State. 2 toughest games in that stretch, Clemson and NC State. What do they have in common? They're both in Tallahassee. And as bad as Florida State's been, the fans still show up. The Seminole chant is the war cry, whatever you want to call it. It's still annoying as heck to hear. And so I think because they have that home field advantage, they win all 4 of those games before ending the season at home against Florida, which I already told you they'll both be 7-4 headed into this matchup. And I think Florida gets the better of them in that game, meaning Florida State is 7-5 and Florida is 8-4. Next team up, we're headed to G, which I don't think I mentioned this in the intro. We're doing D through G. And we have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Man, Georgia Tech. Last year, what could have been? Another game I rewatched. I love rewatching some of the big-time ACC games, especially those on a Thursday, Friday night. They're just phenomenal to watch because some of them, they're just, the talent's not crazy, but they're competitive as heck games. Playing for coaches, coaching for their job, quarterbacks playing for their job, players playing to get, eyes from other schools. It's amazing to watch. And one of those was Georgia Tech and NC State last year. Georgia Tech 8-0, number 8 in the country, headed into, Dave Dorian and this 4-4 unranked NC State squad. And NC State knocks them off, ending Georgia Tech's undefeated season and really ending Georgia Tech's shot at the playoffs and at the ACC championship, meaning they are left out of the playoff and they have to go play in just a normal bowl game. This year, Haynes King is gone. And really the biggest thing on offense for them is the new transfer running back from Michigan, Justice Haynes, guy that I think should be the ACC preseason running back of the year. Him and Isaac Brown from Louisville kind of neck and neck. And so I think Georgia Tech's running game's not really going to take a step back. The question is going to be the passing game, whether that, maybe goes down. They do have Alberto Mendoza, the Mendoza brother. So maybe, they got a little, some of that Mendoza magic. Maybe Georgia Tech goes 15-0 and they win the national championship because they have a Mendoza at quarterback. But I wouldn't be betting on that. They start the season at home against Colorado. I actually think it's at a neutral site. It's in Atlanta. And I think, Georgia Tech and Colorado, I don't think Colorado's defensive line is going to be ready yet to compete with a running game like Brent Key's. That's a win for Georgia Tech. Then they're at home, a real home game, first real home game against Tennessee. Again, Tennessee, they're one of those teams that has the defensive line to stuff up this Georgia Tech run game. And I think Tennessee being able to spread the field around, they just have the superior athletes, the superior speed. I think they knock off Georgia Tech, meaning Georgia Tech's 1-1 through the first 2 weeks of the season. Then they rattle off this win streak. And this win streak is 6 games. I'm going to read you off these games, and then I want you to think to yourself whether you think Georgia Tech is going to lose any of these games. Home against Mercer, at Stanford, host Duke, at Virginia Tech, host Boston College, at Pitt. Think for a second. None of those games are really games in which I'm really scared for Georgia Tech. There's one that stands out, and it's the Week 7 game on the road in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech. That one kind of gets the blood boiling a little bit. That one kind of gets the heart rate pumping if you're a Georgia Tech fan. But other than that, Stanford's not going to be good. Duke, we already talked about them. Maybe they're going to take a massive step back. It's at home, too, for Georgia Tech. You have home against Boston College. What's Boston College going to be? At Pitt. Again, maybe an interesting game, maybe. But, Eli Holstein, is he going to be, how good is he? Is he going to be freshman year Eli Holstein? Is he going to be sophomore year Eli Holstein? You never know. So I think the big one's Virginia Tech. And if they can handle business there, I think there's a good chance Georgia Tech's looking at 7-1, headed into their home game against Louisville in Week 10. And this is where I think it kind of dawns on them. They've won 6 straight games. And eventually there's going to be a game in which, this Georgia Tech running game or this Georgia Tech team, the lack of Canes King and the lack of passing game catches up to them. And I think this is the one. And if in Louisville, because I think Jeff Brom does such a good job of scheming up points that if Georgia Tech gets into a deficit in this game, do we really trust Alberto Mendoza and this Georgia Tech receiving corps specifically to be able to come from behind and really make up points against an offense like Louisville? Louisville's a team that if they can get out to a lead, I feel like they can chew clock. They've, like I said, Isaac Browns and Justice Haynes are 1-2 in the ACC best running back this season. I mean, don't discredit Mark Fletcher, but I do think those two are superior in my eyes. I think this is if they get out to a lead and kind of chew the clock, they can kind of make this a slow slugfest game. I think Georgia Tech would have a hard time coming from behind and winning that game. Should Louisville get out to a lead? So I think it's a win for Louisville. 8-2 at Clemson is a win. Place Georgia Tech struggled to get wins. They did finally break through last year. Game of the year. Again, a game rewatched just recently. That Georgia Tech Clemson game. That walk-off from Aiden Burr, the fire drill field goal. So good. So good. Rewatch that one. That one's amazing. But that I think they get back-to-back wins over Clemson, which is something Georgia Tech fans would love. They beat Wake Forest at home before ending the season at Georgia. And Georgia's going to be pretty good. I'll cover them next. And so, self-explanatory. Georgia Tech loses that game, finishing the season 9-3 with one conference loss. One conference loss. Again, today, I think tomorrow's episode is me covering who I think the conference champions are going to be, as well as my playoff bracket. So make sure I'll either do that. I'm going to do that in the next episode. So later today. So it's probably already posted by the time you're seeing this. But make sure you check into that one later today. But you'll see whether I think Georgia Tech's going to make the ACC championship game. Because although they're 9-3, their 2 of their losses come to SEC schools in Georgia and Tennessee. And so I think Georgia Tech having 1 ACC loss is looking pretty good for them in the ACC championship race. Next team, just talked about them. It's their rival, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, Gunnar Stockton's back. The running back room is back, especially Nate Frazier, who I think is going to be one of the better running backs in the SEC. Offensive line, other than Monroe Freeland and a couple other guys, looks to be pretty solid for this Georgia team. The question I just still have is, does Georgia have the explosive plays? As their receiving core to me is kind of lackluster. It's kind of Zach Branch was huge for them last year with his speed, but he's gone now. Colby Young's gone now. To me, just something about none of this Georgia receiving core just strikes me as like amazing. That kind of stands out as like, if he is good, then this Georgia team can be elite. With that being said, I do have Georgia Tech having a really, really good season. They start the season, Tennessee Tech, Western Kentucky, 2 wins. At Arkansas, I told you Arkansas is not going to be very good. 3 wins. host Oklahoma, their first big test. Because it's at home, if it was in, the Palace on the Prairie, if it was in Norman, Oklahoma, I maybe think differently, but I actually didn't really think twice about this. I think Georgia wins this game. I think Georgia's offensive line can kind of neutralize this Oklahoma defensive line. I think Georgia might, surprisingly, I think weirdly, most analysts are going to think this. I think Georgia's going to be able to run the ball pretty efficiently on Oklahoma. Really like Oklahoma's pass rush. Really like some of the corners they have in. Kind of skeptical about their run defense against kind of a ground and pound team. I just think Gunnar Stockton, his will. I think they handle business against this Oklahoma squad. Home against Vanderbilt, that's a win. Jared Curtis Bowl. Again, if people that don't know, Jared Curtis was a 5-star quarterback committed to Georgia. He ends up flipping his commitment to Vanderbilt last minute. And thank you to Nate Bargatze, the comedian, for flipping him, if you're a Vanderbilt fan. So Vanderbilt, this is the Jared Curtis Bowl. Jared Curtis should be playing by then, should be the starter when those two teams match up. But again, Georgia wins that one. Georgia at Alabama. Kirby Smart needs a regular season win against Alabama. This is the year he gets it. If any year, this is the one. He gets the win there. 6-0, 7-0. They beat Auburn at home, at Florida. Again, this game is in Atlanta, so it doesn't really count as at Florida. If it was in the Swamp, I'd lean Florida. It's at a neutral site. It's actually in Atlanta, which is closer to Georgia Stadium than Jacksonville is normally, so it's basically more of a home game for Georgia. I think Georgia wins. They're 8-0 headed into their biggest game, which is at Ole Miss. And for some reason, I don't think Georgia can get over the Trinidad Chambliss hump. I don't think they have the immediate pass rush to get to Trinidad Chambliss. Because I think the way that you beat Trinidad Chambliss is that you can rush 4 and get pressure home. Miami did this, and they kind of rattled Chambliss. They rushed Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor off the edge, and then they had pressure up the middle, and they rushed 4 and then dropped the other 7 into coverage. And they took away, they made him be patient routes, and they just let that 4-person pass rush get home. And it actually worked surprisingly well. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to shut down Trinidad Chambliss. He's the best quarterback in college football. Actually, I have him right up there on the wall. You can probably not see him, but he is up there on my college football wall. But he's the best quarterback to me in college football. And so I think you can't shut him down, but containing him is being able to put pressure on him with 4 people and then being able to cover the rest of the receivers with the other 7. I don't think Georgia can do that. I really don't trust this Georgia pass rush enough to be able to get pressure with only 4. I think they're going to have to blitz people, which is going to mean there's opportunities for these receivers and this scheme with Chambliss to be able to hit big plays. And I think Ole Miss in this game, it's in Oxford. I think Ole Miss wins this game, handing Georgia their first loss of the season, which meaning they are 8-1. Headed into the last 3 games of the season. Home against Missouri, a win. At South Carolina, sneaky game, by the way. Sneaky game at South Carolina. Watch out for that one. My projection, 17-17 at halftime. Georgia pulls away late. Georgia wins that game. Then hosts Georgia Tech. I just think the talent difference is, quite a bit. Though, don't sleep on this game. The last time this game was in Georgia Stadium. This game was in Stanford. This game went to 8 overtimes. So don't sleep on this one not being competitive. Don't just sleep on the talent difference. But I do think Georgia gets the win there, which means they finish the season 11-1. And I can tell you right now, 11-1 with the only conference loss being to Ole Miss. They will be in the SEC championship game this upcoming season. All righty. Next team up. Now we're getting into the teams that are playing this weekend. We got so excited college football's back. Got some big games this weekend. Maybe not marquee for like the casual college football fan, but we get to see Bill Belichick's debut. I'm actually really excited to see TCU, Jaden Craig, the transfer quarterback from Harvard. Really excited to see him play. We got NC State, Virginia. CJ Bailey and NC State, maybe a dark horse in the ACC. Excited to see how they fare. Virginia Tech, how do they look post Chandler Morris era? It's an interesting one. We're going to get to see Jaden Mayava and how year 2 and he looks for this USC squad. We're going to get to see, who's the other one we get to see? Excuse me, we're missing. We get to see Stanford back. We'll see how they look. But all being said, we got a pretty solid week 1 slate, week 0 slate for you this weekend. That's gonna get some people excited. So the first team up on this list, we're gonna hit the first game of the season, which will be North Carolina and TCU. Week 1, North Carolina, they play TCU, and I think this game, North Carolina needs it. I don't think it's gonna happen. TCU and Sonny Dykes. Jaden Craig, I told you, I've said his name a lot. I really like him. I think TCU wins that game. I think East Tennessee State, week 2 is a win, obviously. Then they have a brutal next 2 games. They're at Clemson, host Notre Dame. Going to Death Valley is a little too much for North Carolina to handle. That's a win for Clemson. And then Notre Dame's just Notre Dame. They're going to be really good. That's a win for the Fighting Irish, meaning they're 1-3 to start the season are the Tar Heels. Then they go on a nice little 3-game winning streak. They go to Pittsburgh, get the win. Go to Duke and get the win. And then host Syracuse is a win. So that's 3 big wins. Not Pitt and Duke, not easy places to play. Not easy coaches to win against. Pat Narduzzi, Manny Diaz, 2 guys that know what they're doing. And then Syracuse could be sneaky. They could pull some upsets. Again, no 3 of those games. I really feel confident in picking the Tar Heels. But in my prediction, I have them winning all 3 of those games. And I have a new look Bill Belichick offense looking up as they're 4-3, little over halfway into the season. Then they host Miami. Miami's too much to ask of for this North Carolina team to beat. Miami gets the win there. Then they're at UConn. I think at UConn, again, FCS or barely like a group of 5 school versus a Power 4 school. This should never really be a question. Is at UConn. If they still had maybe Joey, what's his name? My mind's blanking on their quarterback from last year. But him and Skylar Bell, the receiver, maybe Aline Louis, maybe you give UConn a chance. Not this year. North Carolina gets the win. They are 5-4 headed into the last 3 games of the season. Host Louisville. I've already talked about. I think Louisville is going to be really good this year. So I lean Louisville in that game. At Virginia, I think it's a win for Virginia. Charlottesburg is a tough place to play. Virginia gets the win there. But then they end the season home against NC State. I think they beat NC State in rivalry week. It's their final home game of the year. And I think slinging around the rock, Gio Lopez, year 2. This is a squad in North Carolina that will be desperate to make a bowl game. And I think because North Carolina State doesn't really have anything to play for, once you see their schedule later, I think North Carolina needs this one. I think they're going to play motivated. I think they get the win, meaning they finish the season 6-6, and Bill Belichick's Tar Heels make a bowl game. Not a lot of people think so. I'm one of the few people out there that think he will, but I do think that this is going to work out, and that I think Bill Belichick is going to get him squad to a bowl game. I don't think they're going to keep going up from here. I think they'll probably stay around the 6-6 mark, maybe get up to an 8-4. With a good year, with a good quarterback, with a little bit of luck, but maybe even a favorable schedule. But I think this is it's a step in the right direction, but I don't think it means that they're well on their way to becoming a playoff contender, especially because a lot of these games I don't really feel like NC State. They probably won't be favored in that game. Probably won't be favored at Duke, and I have them winning that game. They might not even be favored at Pitt, and I have them winning that game. So 3 games they're not favored in that I have them winning in, so that means I'm a little higher than most people think on this North Carolina squad, but I do think they get it done. They're 6-6 after this season. Next team up is the team that they play in week 1, which is TCU. I already told you I have them winning week 1 against North Carolina. Week 2, host Grambling State. They get the win there. Week 3, host Arkansas State. They get the win there. They're 3-0 to start the season, before they get their Big 12 opener at UCF. UCF, sneaky decent this year, possibly. UCF beats TCU in this game. Again, one I didn't really think I would project, but I really liked the spot and the place for UCF in this game. UCF gets the win before TCU gets a huge bounce-back game. They're home against BYU. Their home Big 12 opener. First home game against a big team. I think they bounce back in a big way, and they beat BYU, meaning they're 4-1 headed into their road game against Baylor. Already told you DJ Lagway, who's also, up on this poster right up there. He is right up. I think Baylor's going to be pretty solid this season. I think they knock off TCU, making TCU 4-2 through the first, half of the season. Then they enter the back half of the season, host West Virginia, host Kansas, 2 home games where they have more talent. They win both those games, which means they're 6-2. Then in their last 4 games, it's a brutal finisher. They're at Arizona, host Kansas State, host Utah, at Texas Tech. I think that they lose to Arizona, beat Kansas State at home, lose to Utah at home, and then lose at Texas Tech. There's not much I have to explain. If you want to learn more about Texas Tech and Arizona and a little bit about Utah and Texas Tech. A lot of Big 12 stuff in my first episode. Make sure you go back and watch that one. But I think TCU is just not going to be able to handle. I think their big upset comes in week 5 against BYU. Don't think they're going to be able to pull multiple and become a Big 12 contender like they were back in 2023. TCU 7-5 ends the season. Still a bowl game, but maybe not, to the stretch of the imagination that TCU fans would really like to be, which is probably 8-4, 9-3 is what they really realistically put their ceiling at. NC State, week 1, they are at Virginia. Man, this NC State team is going to be pretty solid. I think they beat Virginia on the road, get a win there before they host Richmond, which is also going to be a win, which means they're 2-0 to start the season before they travel to Vanderbilt. I think this is the game. This is the first game Jared Curtis is going to be the starter. Again, him and I forget the name of the other Vanderbilt quarterback who's splitting reps with him. Again, the more experienced guy. I think Jared Curtis, the 5-star freshman, this is the first game he really starts to take over. I think Vanderbilt wins that game, meaning NC State's 2-1 to start the season. Then they host Appalachian State. That's going to be a win, 3-1. Host Louisville. That's a loss, 3-2. Then they rattle off a 5-game winning streak. Host Wake Forest, at Stanford, host Cal, host Duke, host Syracuse. Wake Forest and Stanford are going to be abominations this year. They're not going to be good. They win both those games. And then there are 3 tougher games in that stretch, Cal, Duke, and Syracuse. I think they win all 3 of those because they're all at home. And if you know Wolfpack Stadium, it's a tough place to play. Clemson's had struggles there. I think Cal having to fly all the way out there. Cal has to lose some game. I think they lose that one, which means NC State wins 5 straight games there, meaning they're 8-2 heading into their last 2 games of the season. And this is the one that kind of takes that out of them. They lose to Florida State, meaning that they have 2 conference losses, putting them out of the ACC title race. And then I think kind of just a depressing form. They lose to North Carolina in the last week of the season. And it kind of falls apart the last 2 weeks. It's kind of a what could have been story if they could have won that. But I do think Florida State's able to pull the upset. I say, weird to say Florida State upsetting NC State. But especially in Florida State, I think NC State would be favored in that game too. Not by much, by a little bit. And so NC State knocks off Florida State knocks off the Wolfpack, as do the Tar Heels. NC State, they finished the season 8-4, which North Carolina State fans would absolutely take that. If you don't, then you're kind of a weird and unrealistic expectations as an NC State fan, especially in kind of a loaded second tier of ACC teams. So I think NC State fans, you got to love an 8-4 season, especially one in which you were this close to be making an ACC championship game. You were, a game or 2 away from that happening. Now, the team they play in week 1 is the Virginia Cavaliers, which I already said week 1 at home against NC State's a loss. But then they kind of get it back on track in their next 3 home games. Host Norfolk State's a win, host West Virginia win, host Delaware a win. All 3 of those games they should be favored in. They win all 3 of those. At Florida State is a loss. Really like Tallahassee. Love that. It's tough place to play. Never been personally. Would love to go to a game there. I think it would be, it's a great environment. One of the top places on my bucket list to attend. I think that's a loss for the why do I keep saying Hoosiers? The Cavaliers. So 3-2. Then they finish the first half of the season, host Syracuse. That's a win. I think this new look, Virginia squad with Bo Prabula at quarterback, who's an underrated quarterback, by the way. Him at Missouri last year was really, really good. If he doesn't get hurt, Missouri looking like a contender in the SEC. So I think he's a sneaky quarterback, and I think they start the season 4-2 throughout the first half of the year. Then they lose at SMU before beating Duke and Wake Forest. Duke at home, Wake Forest on the road, which means they are 6-3 headed into the last 3 games of the season. Host Cal's a loss. Cal can't lose all the road games they play. This is the one that I picked out for them to win. I think Jaron Kialway Sagapolitelli is going to be able to tear up this Virginia secondary, which that I think is going under a little bit of a relook this year. They lost a couple pieces in the back end that maybe won't be so easy to replace. They beat North Carolina at home though before they end the season at Virginia Tech. Blacksburg, new look James Franklin squad. I think Virginia Tech gets the win in that game. Kind of a difficult schedule for this Virginia squad. They don't have Miami on it, and they don't have Notre Dame, but other than that, they have some tough spots on this. At Florida State's not easy. NC State in week 1 is not one that you want to have a new quarterback and kind of a new look offense against kind of a more experienced NC State team. At SMU's not easy. At Virginia Tech, they get Cal at home, which again, I think Cal's going to be pretty solid. So just a lot of really weird, a lot of interesting games. You got also West Virginia at home, which isn't going to be easy, kind of sandwiched in between a pair of cakewalks. So how locked in are they going to be in that game? I don't know. But Virginia, it's going to be tough. Virginia, they're going to be 7-5. They're going to go back to a bowl game, but they're not going to get back to winning the making the ACC championship game like they did last year. Righty, we got the last 2 teams on the list. One big one, one small one. Stanford. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. I don't think they're going to be good. Week 1 against Hawaii. Week 0 this Saturday against Hawaii. This is my big one. Hawaii's going to beat Stanford. Saying it right now, Michael Alejo and the Hawaii squad is a good football team. Good football team. They should be a contender in the Pac-12. Hawaii gets the win. Hawaii knocks off Stanford. Then Stanford loses to Miami at home. At Duke, that's a loss. Host Georgia Tech, loss. At Wake Forest, winnable game for Stanford, but because it's on the road, it's a win for Wake Forest. At Notre Dame, no shot they win that game, meaning they're 0-6 to start the season. Week 7, host Elon. There's no way they lose that game, right? They don't. They win that game. Trust. Wasn't going to pick Elon to beat Stanford. That'd be a crazy pick. But Stanford, they get 1 win. Then in week 8 and 9, they host NC State, and then they're at Louisville. 2 more losses, and then they finish the season after their bye week at Virginia Tech, at Cal, and then host SMU. All 3 of those games, not easy games. They lose all 3 of them, meaning they end the season 1-11, with their only win being over Elon. Now, I don't think Stanford's going to be good, but I think they also got gifted with an absolutely brutal schedule. They have to play Miami, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, NC State, Louisville, SMU, Virginia Tech, and Cal. And I haven't given out my ACC power rankings yet. I'll show you what my rankings are at the end of the season. But Miami, I can tell you right now, Miami's number 1. Notre Dame's a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. Louisville and SMU are 2 and 3 in the conference standings. California, I had go 9-3. Go watch my first episode. Virginia Tech on the road with a new look James Franklin's going to be good. I just said NC State was going to go 8-4. So that's 3. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that I all have at least 8 wins. Actually, I don't know for a fact that Virginia Tech has 8 wins, but 7 teams that have 8 wins on their schedule on that Stanford has to play, not including playing one of the toughest group of 5 games against a Hawaii team that's going to be really, really good. So Stanford, they're not going to be very good, I think, but they're going to be not terrible. I think the schedule is just brutal. I think they go 1-11 this season. Now, last team on the list, one everybody kind of been waiting for this episode, the USC Trojans. How will I make Lincoln Riley in year 3, I believe? How will he fare with this USC team? or this is not year 3, excuse me, this is like year 5 for Lincoln Riley. Well, he's going to start the season good because he's going to beat San Jose State at home, beat Fresno at home, beat Louisville at home, then win at Rutgers, which is a sneaky game. They have Oregon and Washington the next 2 weeks. And so it's kind of a look-ahead spot. You got flying all the way to Piscataway, New Jersey. I think kind of a weird spot for USC. I think they do take care of business maybe after a sluggish first quarter, but they win that game. Then host Oregon, host Washington. I think they lose both of those games. I'm really high on Washington. Another player up on this list, DeMond Williams, is up here, up on this sheet. We're just talking about all the quarterbacks up here today, I guess. I think he's going to lead Washington to be pretty solid. And Oregon, I think Oregon's going to be on a mission. I just think Oregon defensively, they have the defensive line to disrupt this Lincoln Riley offense. They did it last year. They're going to score points on USC just like they did last year. I think the game is actually going to look kind of like it did last year, in which I have them losing both of those games. Now, this is the big one. I have them going to Penn State in a whiteout and winning. This would be the biggest step for USC this season. And trust me, in 2 weeks, you're going to see why this is a crazy hot take. This is bigger than what happens in 2 weeks. Because going to Penn State in a whiteout means that they can win in a hostile environment. Something USC has not done. This game's going to be cold. This game's going to be, it's probably going to be, 40, 50 degrees at kickoff, which is, really cold weather. I believe that this USC team is going to have a statement this year. And this is the big one. Then they're at Wisconsin, which I think is going to be a win. And that's the one I was talking about. Hosted Ohio State, I think they win. If you haven't seen the stuff on my wall, you haven't seen the Buckeye stripe or the Ohio State thing there. The Ohio State thing there and here and the stripe and the definition here. And if you look over, I'm not gonna show my room. We don't want to see people where I live, but I got Ohio State stuff all over the place. This is the one I'm nervous about. Not Indiana, not Oregon, not even the game. It's the one at USC. And I think USC is going to win this game. I think Lincoln Riley has to make a statement. And I think Ohio State's the kind of team that this offense can thrive against. And I think USC is going to win this game. They're going to beat Ohio State, kind of go on a 3-game win streak here to rejuvenate themselves before all the good vibes kind of go away as they lose at Indiana before they end the season with wins against Maryland, and then at UCLA they win. 9-3. Does 9-3 with wins over Ohio State and at Penn State get them to the playoff? Well, you'll have to stick around till later episode to find out. Whether USC's 9-3 season puts them in the playoff. Because later today, make sure you tune in. I'm actually going to record it probably 15-20 minutes after I finish recording this, so it's probably out by the time that you're seeing this. Make sure you tune in to who I think will be in each conference championship game, who I think is going to win them, and then what I think the national champion is going to be. It will kind of give away who I think, kind of the record previews for the next one, but we're still going to go over them nonetheless. We just finished through G, which means we got H through H, I, J, K, L probably. L and M, maybe we'll do 6 letters. Probably another 10 to 15 teams is what we're going to get done tomorrow and throughout the week before week 1 officially kicks off, which is 9 days away. LSU, Clemson, Boise, Idaho, Boise State versus Oregon. A lot of big games. Auburn, Baylor is one I'm really looking forward to. So many good games. Ohio State season kicks off. We play Ball State. A lot of things we're looking forward to in week 1 of the college football season. Make sure as college football is rolling around, the Press Coverage Podcast is where you are keeping up with all your college football news. It is the spot that you are looking for all your news, updates, predictions, and so much more. Again, if you've watched this, you made it through the entire thing, make sure you hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube. Make sure that you click that share button, share it, friends, family, people you think that would enjoy this. Again, all of those. Commenting really helps. If you comment, I will respond to it. We'll be doing mailbag eventually once I get enough comments. We'll do mailbags with questions. I'll answer your guys' questions, your comments, your concerns. I appreciate them all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am, as always, your host, Ben Klingler, and thanks for tuning in to the second ever episode of the Press Coverage Podcast.